Press one button. There we go. Welcome everybody to the Contemporary Issue class. We are so pleased to have Representative David Ortiz with us today to talk about what it's like to serve in the legislature. And it's David's first session, served on his first term. So it'll be interesting for us to ask him what has been discussed and passed in the legislature this session, and what is it like? What's your schedule like? And is there cooperation between Republicans and Democrats and all that kind of thing? So I want to thank you for being here today. And for those Zoomers who are with us, we usually have a little owl device that sits in the middle, but we have something different today the church has asked us to use because the owl is elsewhere. And so it's a camera on top of the TV screen. And so this is the way we've set up today with David pointed at the TV screen, and we will do that. But other announcements first. Also, Zoomers, please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen, if you can, on the mute button, so we keep the background noise down. Thank you. And we're recording this for future playback for those who are not able to be here also. And please feel free to ask David questions today. We'll just let him talk a little bit at the start, and then we'll ask questions. So please feel free and uninhibited to do that, but be kind to our speaker and to each other as usual also. Okay. With that, I want to turn it over to Ron Kuning, our classmate who has invited David and knows him well, and welcome David Ortiz to class today.
Okay, well, it's my privilege and our class's privilege to have David here. I, of course, have been involved in the campaign, helping out, doing door knocking and postcards and different things. But more importantly, I think it'd be good. I think we'd all be better in Colorado if we get to meet all the candidates and really come to understand them. So I've had the privilege of meeting David and seeing his vision and knowing what he's experienced and the drive he has to move ahead and make a difference in this world. So with that, David, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank the Puning so much for inviting me here, and thank your parish for hosting me and having these discussions. These matter. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Representative David Ortiz. I'm an Air Force brat. I'm the oldest of four. And the crux or the center of my life of service has always been an expression. It's an African proverb. It goes, "I am because we are because I am," or "I am, we are" for short. And the reason why it speaks to me is because it recognizes the impact the individual can have on shaping and forming a community, but also the impact the community has in shaping and forming the individual. And it kind of creates, in one simple line, the way we're all dependent on each other, the way we kind of work together to impact and change our world. So whether it was resettling evacuees after Hurricane Katrina, that was my first job after graduating college, or whether it was setting up educational opportunities with universities around the world, working for the mayor's office for the city of Houston, that's always been the focus of my life. Went on to serve my country in a more intense way as a combat aviator, helicopter pilot in the Army. When I was deployed to Afghanistan in June of 2012, I survived a catastrophic crash. That's what put me in the chair. Barely survived, tried to pass away twice on the way back. I always like to say that God wasn't ready for me and the devil was afraid. For whatever reason, I ended up still being here. And that started me on this journey of rebuilding my life, regaining my independence. I realized and learned real quick that the world is not made for people that live with a disability. It's not designed for us, it's not made for us. Basic access is a huge issue. That's part of what made recovery difficult, but I was able to do it because of the community. The adaptive sports programs here are second to none. I downhill ski, I cross country ski, I mountain bike here. That's what helped get me my life back. Craig Hospital, if y'all don't know, it's a gem in this entire United States, but definitely in Colorado. It's the best spinal cord rehab and brain injury hospital in the US. I would say it's top 10 in the world. That's who also helped me get my life back. Started advocating and lobbying for veterans. My battalion commander was, "Hey, you got a big mouth. You're pretty charismatic. Let's put that to use." So he recruited me to lobby and advocate for veterans in the state capital in DC. And then there was a state senator out of Lakewood who's running for federal Congress now. Her name is Brittany Pedersen. If you're familiar with her, great. If not, she is the type of woman that when she knows she's right, she doesn't take no for an answer, because I must have told her no 5 different times. But the leaders in the community were what convinced me to serve. My life has always been geared around service, and it was them saying, hey, the life that you've lived has not been easy. The experiences you have are many, and I think they're critical, and we think you can be of true service here. That's why I put my hat in the ring, and because of amazing people like the Punings and the community in general, that's how I was able to win my seat. If it was not for the community coming together and helping me raise 250,000 plus, if it was not for all the doors knocked and all the phone calls made, I mean, my team of 14 interns, whose average age was 17, made almost 200,000 phone calls. You're talking about young men and women that can't even vote, but that want to impact policy because they know it's going to affect them and their adult lives.
David, let me mention, for those who don't know, David's a Democrat, and he serves Littleton and Centennial areas.
So House District 38 is Littleton and Centennial. With redistricting, it's moved further west. We still have little slivers of Centennial, but mostly into Littleton and into Beaumont neighborhoods. Columbine Valley is kind of where we moved into. So what was it like to serve in the legislature? Because the last time I was in front of y'all, it was just as a candidate. Politics is a very intense profession. I hate calling it a game, but that's what it does feel like sometimes. My analogy that I like to say, it feels sometimes like you're the person banging your head up against the wall, especially if you're there trying to do the right thing. And every once in a while, someone will come behind you and like stab you in the back 2 or 3 times. And you're like, okay, who did that? What happened? You know what I mean? But that's the worst part of it. The proud moments are when we're able to do something around healthcare. One of the bills that Team Democrat did last year was to put the onus on the industry, because the industry is always like, well, don't make a single payer system, don't put mandates on us, we can save money ourselves. Okay. So the Colorado legislature took them at their word and said, all right, we're putting the ball in your court. If you don't lower prices 3% in a certain amount of time, then there's going to be repercussions, and we're going to try it our way. You said you can save money, put the ball in your court, see if you can save Coloradans money. If you can't meet those goals for whatever reason, then we're going to take over. That doesn't mean single payer system, but there's going to be repercussions if they're not able to meet those goals that they negotiated. It wasn't us just mandating to them, it was them negotiating with us. Because of the ARPA dollars, we were able to invest $450 million in affordable attainable housing. One of the bills that I led invests $150 million into a revolving loan fund. So that creates affordable attainable housing opportunities across the state. We've also invested $450 million into mental health care to include a program that allows minors or any child to have up to 4 free visits with a mental health care specialist. We'd like to do more, but that's a good start because we know mental health is at the crux of a lot of issues, whether we're talking about homelessness, whether we're talking about gun violence, whether we're talking about a lot of issues. The heart of it, and for me anyways, always reaches back to mental health. So really proud of that investment. We also invested $200 million in job creation and job development. So I think with those 3 legs of the stool, we're really setting up some transformational changes. As far as what I've specifically done as well, 7 disability rights laws, 3 first in the nation. So Colorado's leading the charge in making sure that people with disabilities have equal access. That's what it's about. We're not asking for a handout, we're asking for equitable treatment, just like everyone else gets. We want to be able to show up at a rental car company and know that our car is going to be ready to go.
And David, you're the first handicapped person to serve in the legislature, right?
The first with a mobility disability, because there's a lot of invisible disabilities, so I don't, and not everyone self-identifies, but I am the first with a mobility disability, and that forced renovations in the state capitol just so I could do my job.
Like what?
So they installed a ramp so that I could even get to my desk or even get on the floor, right? So I'm the only legislator that when they were elected, they couldn't even get on the House floor yet. So they had to do those renovations before session started, including a lift that went up to the speaker's podium, because for the first time in Colorado's entire history, you had somebody with a mobility disability chairing the committee of the whole.
How old is that capitol?
Oh my gosh, I should
100
know
years?
yeah, at least. I should know the answer to
I'm
that.
just
Yeah.
wondering how long it's been.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a long time coming. It's been way overdue, but this is why representation matters. One of the many reasons why. I, having been a service member or veteran, I never forget where I came from. So one of the other bills that I ran was a veteran preference hiring for veterans in transition. When service members are transitioning out of the military, there's a window where things can go very wrong, where because you're leaving a very intense job with a built-in family network, and then all of a sudden you're in the civilian world, sitting in your thoughts sometimes, and if there's a failure to be able to transition and succeed, that's what usually leads to drug and alcohol abuse, issues with the law. So what the veteran preference hiring does is allows within the first 5 years of transitioning out, that if education and training is equal, that a private company can hire the veteran, all things being equal over everything else for the first 5 years of their transition. We also expanded access to veteran treatment courts. If y'all don't know, this is the most successful specialized court program. So I don't know if y'all know what specialty courts, but another example is drug court. So, but veteran treatment court has an 85+% success rate. What it does is if you committed a nonviolent crime, and it can be traced back to undiagnosed or untreated mental health issues that is tied to your service, then you do plead guilty. You go on probation though instead of going to jail, and you stay on probation, and you can be reintegrated back to your families, friends, society, community. If you start seeing a mental health care specialist, if you start meeting these gates that they assign for you. So we expanded access to that program. I was really proud of that work that we did there. We invested $600 million back into the unemployment insurance program. I think we all know how critical that was during a time of COVID-19, where we had families through no fault of their own that were losing their jobs, which is what carried them through the pandemic. Well, we found ourselves in a situation because it was so effective at carrying people through that if we didn't work to make it solvent, that small businesses were going to take a hit on increased premiums. As business owners, even campaigns have to do this, you pay into the unemployment insurance pool. So by investing $600 million back into it, we're making sure that we're keeping that program solvent for when families in the future, through no fault of their own, lose their job, and to make sure that our small businesses aren't taking a hit on higher premiums so that they're not having to lay off workers as we come out of the pandemic. Also did the SALT parity bill, which because of the way that taxes can pass through for partnerships, so that's LLCs and S Corps, it allows them to get the same federal tax exemption as C Corps. So we didn't understand why the bigger businesses, C Corps, got a stronger tax advantage than smaller businesses. So we just put that on the parity. That was my first year we put it into parity, and then last year we made it retroactive. So we're talking about saving small businesses up to $400 million across the state. I think that's really critical investment as we're coming out of the pandemic as well. So I will leave it there. I mean, that the 40-something bills with over a 90% success rate, I think a lot of that speaks to the cohesiveness of the team. A lot of that speaks to the tenacity and the fight in Team Ortiz. I'm very lucky with the people that work in my office and that I surround myself with. And that also speaks to my experience of having been a lobbyist and being able to know the system and how to fight. I'll tell this one last story and I'll open it up to questions. But there were two disability rights bills, the rental car bill that I was running to make it equitable and accessible when it came to being able to rent accessible options on websites, where at the beginning, the lobbyists were playing ball and cooperating. And then when they realized that it was going to pass, they weren't sure it had any chance of passing. They started lobbying against it and advocating against it to my peers in the House. Well, they have a great relationship with me. So they realized real quick that the bill of goods that the lobbyist was selling them wasn't what the bill was. So it had no problem passing out of committee. It made them look bad. Had no problem passing out of the House. It made them look bad. Even though still they were being disingenuous, I was still working with them to add on amendments. But then the gloves came off when it went to the Senate, because that's where they decided they were really going to work on it to try and kill it. A lot of my Dem colleagues in the Senate, who I don't get to interact with every day from the House, started messaging me like, hey, what's going on with the car rental bill? Why are the lobbyists coming up to me and say there's real problems with it? So they want to play that game, they can play that game. I was a lobbyist too, so I took the gloves off and fair enough. To the point where I kicked one of the lobbyists out of my office because he had the gall to lie to my face about what the bill was going to do and what we had agreed to. So it gave the rental car companies a 3-year runway to implement what this bill was going to be. 3 years. ADA has been law for 30+ years. And I'm giving you an additional 3 years to not be a jerk. So then the guy sitting in my office telling me, well, you do realize this becomes law as soon as it's signed. I'm like, yeah, according to the Constitution, it has to, but I built in a 3-year runway, so you're not liable for breaking the law, essentially, and it gives you some time to work out the kinks. Well, this is going to take us time to work on the website. I was like, your IT department was in the stakeholder meeting saying that y'all could do this in 60 to 90 days. Well, I don't remember that being said. Straight to my face. And I had one of my aide right there who was in that meeting. I looked at him and I was like, did they not say that? And he was like, yes, sir, they did. And then the lobbyist was like, well, are you questioning my integrity? I'm like, I'm not just questioning, I'm calling you a liar. Well, I'm not going to sit here and have my integrity questioned. Get out of my office. There's a door. So he left, and the other lobbyist stayed, and it was one of those awkward, silent moments. She tried to keep going, pretending as if nothing happened, and I was like, I looked at her, and I was like, you realize that I don't have to add what I consider a little bit of an unfriendly amendment. I have the votes to get this passed out of the Senate, and so she started playing ball again and like trying to work with me. But I was like, if he ever comes back in my office, he better come back with an apology and he better come correct, because I'm not putting up with that crap. Because us as electeds, we are up for votes in the House every 2 years, and the Senate it's every 4 years. No one elects the lobbyists. And some of them think they can get away with playing a very dirty game.
They make a lot of money.
Yeah, well, especially the corporate ones, it's absolutely right.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells you what can happen. But because of my time as a lobbyist, I was like, oh, you want to play this game? I can play this game too. I started knocking down the doors of every single Democrat and senator, including the leadership, and was getting in their faces as if I was a lobbyist again, and saying, this is BS, they're lying here, they're misrepresenting what this bill does, this has been stakeholded, in fact. So it was Hertz that was being the bad faith actors. In fact, it was Enterprise that already put the accessible options on their website while this bill was being made. So they were able to do it before the bill was even done getting passed, because they knew it was coming. So don't tell them anyway. So
Thanks for that example of how the sausage is made.
there's a lot more examples, but what I want to leave you with this is that every vote does matter. Whether you're talking about a general election or primary, an off year, I say there's no such thing as off years, but like city council races or a presidential year. And here's why: because even though we're passing $450 million for mental health, even though we're passing $450 million for housing, who do you think is going to push their local governments to apply for that and how to implement that? It's going to be county electeds and city council members that are going to decide how that's managed and run and dispersed. And so for the first time in Littleton's city council history, we have the most, I mean, they can't run partisan. We have the most city council members that resonate with my values, with affordable, attainable housing, with making sure we're welcoming members of our community. Because think about this, y'all spent all this time and money raising kids. Can they afford to move back in the communities that should raise them in? When a house is $650,000, $750,000 just to buy? No, they can't. And I know Kate and I, my wife, we talk about starting a family soon. Like, I would love if one of my kids decided to want to move back to live close to me. But if the housing prices are 3 or 4 times the amount, put them out of reach, that's going to bum me out. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of amazing work that we do as a team. As far as like the way it can be bipartisan, it can get done. A lot of my bills are bipartisan. A lot of my bills that I run in a bipartisan way tend to be other veterans, just because there's a camaraderie there that kind of supersedes party. But I'm not going to pretend like it's all kumbaya. It's not, especially in the House, because the House represents a smaller, like each House district represents a smaller number of people than a Senate district. That's why you have more House representatives than senators, and so you can get some real intense individuals elected, like a Ron Hanks that still carries water for the big lie and says that it was Antifa that was there on January 6th. You know what I mean? So it still gets pretty divisive and pretty tough sometimes. But for those that are dedicated to try and work in a bipartisan way and work together, you can. I mean, my revolving loan program was bipartisan with Rep. Perry Will, who's one of my favorite Republicans on that side of the aisle. And ask any Democrat, and it's not just any Republican. He's very well respected. He's very even keeled. He's like the uncle or the grandpa that you want to have a cup of coffee with and spend time with. He's just an amazing, good-hearted human being. Another one whose policies I don't agree with, but that I have all the love and that I will fight tooth and nail for, is Representative Terry Carver. And she was a JAG officer in the Air Force. I call her small but mighty. She's all of like 5 or 4'10". But when she gets up at that well, because she's a legal background, she's a lawyer. When she gets up at that well and argues for her policies, it's never, she comes with passion, but it's never based on passion. Does that make sense? She's making the arguments to the letter of the law. And it's like watching a Jedi get up there and make the points, and just the way she does it, it's almost her own art form. So there is some bipartisanship that can still happen, even if I disagree with the policies of some of those individuals. There is camaraderie that can still happen. I think it's more tenuous and more stretched than it was when I was a baby lobbyist back in 15, 14, 16, 17, but it can still happen for those that are dedicated to bringing that kind of emotion and attitude to the Capitol.
David, let's go ahead and let folks ask questions. And I want to ask Zoomers if you can hear us okay also. Susan, can you hear David speaking okay? Good, thank you. Good, and if you have a question, chime in too. Okay, anybody go ahead.
I got one.
Keith.
You mentioned Enterprise car rental. A really quick story and then a question. at the beginning of the pandemic, we as a church worked with an agency called Integrated Family Community Services, kind of like Federal in Hamden, and they have a food bank. At the beginning of the pandemic, Enterprise Truck Rental came to them and said, "You're going to be slammed because of the need for food," and consequently they were, or subsequently they were. They said, "What can we do to help?" And they provide a truck at a very, very minimal rental rate. And they've done it for 2.5 years, going on 3 years, to pick up probably 20 tons of food a month for their food banks because of Enterprise Truck Rental and this agency called IFCS.
That's
The
great.
question is, how much do representatives get paid? Do you have to be independently wealthy to be there, or do you have to have a day job, or how does that work?
I mean, really, you kind of do, or you have to be retired, because we get paid $42,000 a year, which is, I mean, I guess we're kind of on par with teacher pay, so I guess we get to know what teachers pay, like, right? That's why you see a lot of those that are in the Capitol as lawyers that can kind of do their consulting and they're in charge of clients on the side, like apart from their schedule at the Capitol, or individuals that are retired. You do have individuals that are professionals, like our Representative Bacon, for example, Jennifer Bacon, who was a school board member and now a state representative. And I hear stories all the time about her having a hard time trying to live off of just, excuse me, the salary that this provides. Or you have a Representative Iman Judah, who's the first Muslim woman ever elected to the state capitol. I mean, she's a young professional too, and she recently got married, so having 2 incomes for the household is helpful for her. But she also talks about how that's very difficult. The idea of trying to live off of $42,000 in the state of Colorado, especially if you're living in the big city areas, the Denver metro areas.
So I think, David, part of that is people wonder if you're only working January to May during the session, then are you off the whole rest of those months, the rest of the year? Are you doing 40 hours a week the rest of the year, planning and doing other things? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's going to be up to the legislator. I will say that, and this is a generalization, it's not everyone, right? But I will say that Democrats tend to work harder in the off session than Republicans do, and that's a function of the platform and the values. If you believe that government can work for people, then you're always working to make sure that it does. If you believe that less government, if your philosophy is less government is better, then that's the way you're working from that perspective. So I not that my Republican colleagues don't work, some of them do, especially some of those that are veterans or that are in the rural areas. They will do a lot of work in the off session to make sure they're doing listening tours or to make sure they're serving veterans or whatever nonprofit that they tend to support on the off session. I can speak for some of my Democratic colleagues. A lot of them are already, as soon as day one is over, like a session, well, they might take a vacation of like 2 weeks to a month, but then they're already talking and working on the bills that they're bringing forward next session, and already making sure they're going into the community and having town halls and listening tours so that they make sure that they're taking input. This is not a part-time job. I think that's been, for me, one of the most difficult things about this job. If you care about it, you'll realize real quick that the needs of the community are endless if you care. If your life is based around service and you're truly wanting to serve others, the needs of the community, the people that are suffering out there, are always endless. And this job will consume you if you allow it to. It absolutely will. So.
Questions? Go ahead. Or I will keep talking to David all out. David, do you get a lot of requests? Okay, we finish this one. Do you get a lot of requests from constituents? Are they calling and every day? Or what kind of things are they asking? Are they asking to help get Social Security help, or what is it?
I mean, a lot of individual representatives, senators will attract people based on the issues that they're champions for, or based on their personal lived experience. So my constituents come to me for a lot of things, but what I also tend to get the most of, especially from people that aren't even my constituents, are people that live with a disability that will approach me and be like, my home health care is being taken away by the state. Why is this happening? Help me get it set back up. Or veterans will come forward to me, or family members of veterans will be like, the VA is dragging their feet on specialized care, and this is, negatively impacting the health of my loved one or myself, and they're not even my constituent. So what I'll do in those cases is I will still help them. Like, I am a servant of the people, even though it's HD 38 is my district. I don't turn anyone away. What I will do if they're not in my district, though, is I'll immediately find out who their senator and who their representative is and put them on a group email, Because if they start slacking, hopefully it shames them into doing more work, right? I've not encountered that yet, but it's a way of drawing in other legislators and to teach them what I already know on my personal expertise. I shouldn't be the only representative that serves veterans. Every single one of us should be doing that for our veterans in our district. I should be the only person serving individuals with a disability. That is all of our responsibilities. Just because I live with that and happen to know more about the system doesn't mean that I am the go-to. Again, I don't mind being of service, and I will carry that case all the way through until their state representatives, senators pick it up, and I'll still be involved and make sure that it gets to a good resolution. But the services that we provide are many. You again, like I said, the needs of the community are many. You'll do it to the nth degree. As far as like how available do I make myself, something that I do that no other legislator does, to have policy advisory committees based around subject areas. And I think when I first got elected, we started with like 6 to 10, and now it's narrowed down to 3 or 4 because they're constituent led. Like this is something that is supposed to be for the constituents, by the constituents. And basically what it is, it's a committee or a group of interested individuals around a certain policy issue that will keep track of bills coming through the system on their own that have to do with that area. So let's take health care, for example, because that's the most active one that I have. Mostly because I'm on the health and insurance committee. So I'm the vice chair of that committee. So what they'll do is when bills are going to come before the committee beforehand, I will let them know, hey, these are the bills coming forward. What questions do you have? What concerns do you have? Do you like this bill? Kind of what, like, just take a temperature and then take whatever questions they have. And then I will literally ask them their questions in committee while this bill is being presented. Some of them, I have a live chat that goes on while I'm in committee. So some of them are listening live as these bills are being heard, and they will request me that I ask questions during the committee hearing. So, because that is our job, I feel, as representatives, is to take your voice to the Capitol. So I really love how these policy advisory committees are taking shape and how they really allow my constituents to participate, even if they can't physically be there at the Capitol through me. So I make myself available all the time. I think the thing that's frustrating to me, though, is that I tend to only hear from a large number of people when they really oppose something. And that's, to be quite frank, that's obnoxious to me. If you are a citizen that wants to see more gun safety measures passed, then you better believe that I'm going to hear from those that don't want any gun safety laws passed whatsoever, because I hear from them when those bills come forward. I need to hear more from individuals that believe in common sense gun safety legislation when these bills come forward, because then that allows me in committee to be able to say, hey, I heard from X amount of constituents in total, X percentage are in favor of this policy, X percentage are being against. Humans tend to be very reactive, and they tend to be very reactive to the negative. Everybody loves to complain. Everybody wants to talk to the manager when something isn't right. And when things are okay, it's too easy to be like, well, things are running good, so I'm not going to rock the boat, or I'm not going to say anything. But we need to consistently to hear from constituents when they're in support of something just as often as when they're in opposition to something. So I'll put that out there as well.
Well, you led into my question, which is 2 parts. Number 1 is state Medicare dead? And number 2, doesn't Massachusetts have a state Medicare system, and how is it working?
They do, and it's been working, as far as my knowledge goes, it's been working out pretty well for them. Now, do we have Medicare, Medicaid in the state? Yes. We don't have a single payer system here.
Right.
And that, to be quite frank with you, that's something that would be a very heavy lift. I mean, part of it would be because of some of the moderate Democrats that just don't think that's the way to go. Even though we have the trifecta, now we're facing an election cycle where the party in power tends to take a shellacking. So the Democrats have the power right now. So you're faced with the possibility that we might lose the state Senate. And if we lose the state Senate, you better believe that a lot of the policies that I'm supportive of that have us working together and has the government working together with their constituency to provide some of these services, those things don't have a snowball's chance to be able to pass if we lose the Senate. So that's something that we're working on. The healthcare bill that I talked about at the beginning about putting the onus on the industry as a whole to lower costs started off as it was called the Colorado option, because it was going to move things to a single payer system, or to that kind of an option for Medicare, Medicaid for all, if the industry didn't lower costs by a certain amount over a certain amount of time. The governor was very opposed to that, and the governor does have a lot of influence in the legislature, for better or for worse. So that was something that got talked out of the bill. It's this is a long way of saying it's still a possibility. We just have to keep working with our constituency and working with those electeds that can be convinced to support it and making sure that we vote in every election.
What does that look like if there's no Senate?
It's going to be a very tough 2 years as far as moving the needle forward. What might end up happening, and this is just me speculating, and this is me speculating as a lobbyist when I was there when we had a split when the Republicans had the Senate and the Democrats had the House, is the bills you're going to see come forward are going to be about managing the programs we have in existence, probably, especially those that help out areas that Republicans tend to care about, which are rural areas as well. So if it's a mental health bill around getting more mental health care specialists, that would probably be something that we could get done in a bipartisan way. There are still issues that we'll be able to work on and focus on in a bipartisan way, but a lot of the groundbreaking stuff, probably not.
You mentioned that you want to hear from constituents. What's the best way for us, the people, to communicate with you? Is it a snail mail letter? Is it email? Is it text? Is it, what is it?
Well, I will speak for myself in my office, it's not for my peers. We make ourselves available in lots of different ways. So we do get snail mail, we do read those letters, and we do respond. We also have a team that checks the emails, and we all, as an entire office, work on responses because they're the ones that will put them out, but they get my input on how to respond to them. So it's not, yeah, an intern technically is emailing you back, but it's after all of us together reading 5 or 6 of the emails around a certain topic, and us as an office working together on a response.
So my hearing email is,
I mean,
maybe more
phone
effective.
calls is good, snail mail is good, email is good. The best, if you want the most FaceTime with me, like if that's what you're looking for and want the most, and you have the time for that, and have the most, getting involved in policy advisory committees is probably the most impactful way, because you get your voice directly heard on individual policies or on topics as a whole. I will take your questions that you might have and ask them in committee. If you want that kind of a direct representation, the policy advisory committees are the best way to be able to be involved in my offices. But we will approach people where they're at. I will also say that we just started a TikTok. I do not make TikTok videos. That is my interns. Those are the young kids that know how to do that. But I feel like it was important to allow them to do that, because we have to approach all the constituents from 18 to, I don't know who the oldest person in Colorado is, but to there, in the way that they prefer to be reached out to. So we make ourselves available in all ways.
I think Judy was first.
Where is the best place to read Colorado House bills, to read the bill itself, and everything about it, whether it's been passed or being voted on? Or
Yeah, so the Colorado website is actually really, really great for that.
what is the website?
Just Google co-ledge, so C-O-ledge. So when I Google it, because I use it as a resource all the time, I just Google the acronym for the state, CO, and then LEG, short for legislature. That's literally all you have to Google is co-ledge. It'll be the first thing that comes up. You click on it.
Legislature.
Yeah.
And then you can read the bills.
I mean, you can look if you want to do research on specific representatives and see what bills they ran, you can do that. If you want to just do a generic, because they have a search bar. If you want to do a generic search of all House bills by topic, like you want to do environment, and you do all House bills, it'll pull that up so you can sift through that. If you want to limit it by year, if you want to limit it by chamber, there's lots of ways to fine tune your search to make it as specific or as broad as possible. And actually, we do workshops on how to utilize that in the policy advisory committees too. Because
In regards to housing, are you familiar with the new House bill in regard to homeowners associations, HOAs? There's a new bill, I understand it was just passed recently.
yes, and it wasn't me. I wasn't the sponsor of the HOAs. I don't live in an HOA, and for those of you that do love HOAs, I'm sorry for what I'm about to say, but I hate HOAs. I just really have a big problem with, and this is one of the bills that was ran. So what was happening was somebody wasn't notified in all the ways possible that their dues weren't being paid or something like that. Long story short, people's HOAs were taking away people's homes, which is absolutely ridiculous. HOA should not have that kind of power. Sorry, but not sorry.
I think they had just way too powerful.
Yes.
And I think what inspired this bill was some incidents in what was it, Green helps. Fees or.
Yep. That's exactly what spurred that bill. I was really proud of my colleagues that passed it. For those of my colleagues that live in HOAs and love working in the HOA issue, God bless them, because that bill got really contentious. I was like, wow, who would have thought? Again, I never lived in an HOA, never knowing, but definitely followed my colleagues' lead and supported curbing some of the power.
Do you know much about the new bill?
I mean, I knew when it was coming before me, like whenever bills come before me, I do my research, but there's hundreds of bills that come before me. So once it's done, I mind up and focus on whatever else is going on. So,
I read just a little bit about it. From what a little bit I read, it sounds like it really it reduces the power
yes,
that the HOAs have over homeowners.
correct.
It does, it requires more notice be given to the homeowner. It in essence extends the period of the homeowner being able to rectify whatever the problem is. And it also reduces the fees that they would
Let's,
charge. So I did it reduce the fees. Yeah, so it has some very positive effects.
It's a great issue, and as an HOA president currently, I'm interested in that for my neighborhood. But I'm not gonna take your house.
Trust me.
I will-
The real
I don't
power.
want your house. But let's go ahead and move on if we can to Ann. She's got a question too.
Well, I am one of your constituents and called you, and thank you for answering your phone. I was pleasantly surprised to talk directly to you. I just wanted to let you know I was concerned about wandering for Alzheimer's people and other people, you know, that are have that problem too. Unfortunately, the person that you gave me for contact, you know, she couldn't come up with even any other ideas. Fortunately, we live in Arapahoe County. If any of you live in Arapahoe County, call the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department. They have an amazing program. My husband Paul wore a watch device, and it tracked him down. One time I was at church singing away in the choir, and they found him in 15 minutes. I got the idea that, hey, this should be statewide, but unfortunately the person that you advised me to call didn't. I was able to connect with a private citizen and a representative in Lakewood, and they did pass the Wandering Act, but guess what they did before they did it? They gutted a lot of the important things. At least it provides money for counties to start a program, but we need to have something that's coordinated throughout the state of Colorado. Even with Alzheimer's, my husband and I spent many times going to the mountains over the years. You know, he's had 18 years of Alzheimer's. And so we, went to a variety of places. Some places would have something if he wandered off, but I, really kept a watchful idea, but it makes sense, and it's too bad. At least it's got to start. So I was involved with the Wandering Act and testified at the Senate. I really encourage people to get involved, because even though you're one person, you can make a difference.
Well, I would love to follow up with you and put that in my newsletter. That way people know the POC that's going to be effective for them, the point of contact that's going to be effective for them. And if you want to continue working on this on a bigger scale around legislation, I would welcome you into the health advisory committee. That way we can do something on a bigger level around policy, but that's completely up to you.
Okay.
This lady will, she's like a bulldog. She won't quit. I'm just telling you.
It should be all throughout the whole United States, but we got to start small. But it did make a difference in my life and Paul's life, because it was like a security blanket. He had that device on. I tested it every day. I got home visits by Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department. They're amazing. I can't say good enough things about them. They still have the program. They unfortunately can't do home visits, but if you know anybody, get a device before they start wandering.
Thank you.
Could you tell me about what our gun laws are in Colorado?
So I did put out a newsletter that talks about the gun safety legislation that we passed over the past 6 years. I think. That kind of did a consensus because people, after all the shootings started happening in the spring, I mean, the grocery store shooting, Uvalde, like everything started really popping up intensely, spring and summer. There was a lot of anger and frustration. And most of that should have been meant for the federal level, but a lot of it started being pointed our way. And so that's why I responded. I was like, hey, look, like this is the amazing work that we've been able to do here in the Colorado, including the red flag bill, including gun safety storage laws, including, stuff around domestic violence that Representative Duran ran around gun safety legislation. So we've been able to do some amazing work. Reach out to my offices, and again, I don't have the list in front of me, and I don't have it all memorized, but I can get you all a list of the gun safety legislation that we've been able to do. That being said, there's still a lot more work to do. I remember calling the gun safety lobbyists, so those that work for like every town or gun owners for safety, like I call them the good guys. They're not corporate lobbyists. They're ones that are fighting for the issues that we care about, that don't get paid a lot, but they're still advocating for these issues. And they wanted some time to gather because they had a lot of summer conferences coming up where everyone's going to get together and kind of propose or decide what kind of packet of bills they want state legislators to bring forward, including bringing the age down to 18, including making gun manufacturers liable for crimes that are committed with their weapons. So there's a whole packet of host of things that might be coming forward. The gun safety lobby asked for some time to work together amongst themselves. Then they want to start meeting with us and working with us to make sure that we're bringing together another packet of bills forward. Colorado has done some amazing things compared to other states, especially when on the federal level. I mean, we just barely got that act passed on the federal level, right? And this is after Sandy Hook. This is after the list goes on and on. But there's a lot of work that we can still do here in Colorado. So stay tuned if you want to sign up for the newsletter. That's one great way to stay up to date, to where you don't have to call in. Like, you will get information sent to you about every 2 weeks. I'm going to try and do an update every 2 weeks of what we're working on, what we've been working on, or whatever timely topic might be happening. So.
Are you gonna be passing something around for us to sign up?
Yes, we should. Do we have a sheet of paper there?
Can the state force the sheriffs to enforce that red flag law?
Yeah, Douglas County just passed something that the sheriff said he will not be enforcing the red.
So that's more the AG's office. Yeah, that's more the AG's office. We as a state legislature could talk about passing statewide penalties. But again, we have to see what happens in this election. If the Democrats lose the Senate, something like that will have no chance of passing. So there is a proposal, there's a list of proposals that we're bringing forward to see how we can enforce the laws that already exist better, and then also what new laws we can bring forward to make our community safer. And again, look, I'm going to be, really honest. Like, I am a gun owner myself. I'm a responsible gun owner. They're locked up, as they should be. But we as gun owners, if we really want to protect the Second Amendment, then we should be supporting responsible gun safety legislation. Everyone keeps saying, well, it's the person, not the gun. Well, look in other countries, that's not the case. I mean, there was a tweet by Bober after the shooting in Denmark, and she was like, see, look at all the gun safety laws Denmark has, and they still have mass shootings. And I was like, this is the twisted logic of the GQP. Because, and this is the logic they use saying vaccines aren't effective. You have one breakthrough case,
Right.
and all of a sudden, everything that you've ever tried to do is ineffective. That's not the way the world works. Name one thing that is 100% foolproof. Besides that, if you're born, you're going to pay taxes and you're going to die. Like, those are the two guarantees you have in life. That's it. So, I mean, I look at the information, and from the 90s until 2016, Denmark had something like 316 gun homicides. Whereas just in 2016 alone, the United States had over 11,000. Okay, so don't buy into that BS. And I think we're all smart enough here to know that that's not how it works. But we have a lot of work to do, and you better believe that Team Democrat is working together to try and figure out the best way to go forward on that.
I'm just curious about what age do you find that people really start listening to what's going on and getting involved? I only say that because my family who are raising children. They're very, very busy. But when it comes to talking about political issues, what's going on, they're really not in tune to that kind of stuff. You know, I'm not really even sure that they vote, to be really honest with you. And so I'm wondering, is there a trend that way that parents are, when they're raising their kids, are busy and they're not involved in political issues and how that they're not teaching that? Like their kids learn this stuff at school, obviously, you know, so.
I hear from mostly older folks.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, what's the general?
I mean, if you look at, so there's a lot of ways that we can find out information about voters across the state. The Voter Action Network and Fill Out Never Ban is one way that we can, and we get to see how often someone votes, what elections they participate in. We don't get to see how they vote, but we get to see when they vote and how often they vote. And it tends to be your older folks. That's just the bottom line. And part of it too, like, let's be honest, like being a young adult in 2022 is not the same as being a young adult in the 1980s or the 1960s.
Right.
It's not. If you look at the portion of what you could earn at a factory job, right? Any job compared to how much college used to cost back in the 1960s versus now, it is leagues apart. The price of college now, you can, back in the 60s, you could work a summer job and be able to pay for your school. There is no way, even if you're going to a college, that you can do that now. So you have young adults that are being forced, if they want to pay for school, to go into debt, and then to pay that debt after they graduate. And a lot of them aren't getting the jobs they need at a livable wage to be able to pay that debt, so they're having to work 2 or 3 jobs. Housing, I mean, when I bought my house in 2013, it was $185. You'll never find anything for $185 in this area. So not only are they having to pay their loans, but now housing is out of reach for them.
Not even condos are that.
Yeah, well, rent is even ridiculous in some places. So, well, not all places, but definitely in some places. So I don't want to assume that it's because people or young adults don't care. I just think we have set up society in a way to where they can't care. Now, this is the only like grace of like the one thing I'll beat them up on is if they live in the state of Colorado, we make it so dang easy to vote. We literally drop it in your lap.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is fill out those stupid bubbles, slap a stamp on it if you want to, or drop it off at any time, like at any time. So that's where I won't give them any leeway. Like that's where I won't give them an excuse. There's no excuse not to vote. And if you, oh, by the way, it even comes with a blue book.
Yeah.
Colorado even
Yes.
spends the money to print out information so that you can be an informed voter. So and the reason why I'm beating it up is because I'm really disappointed at the turnout for the primary. I know that at least on the Democratic side, we didn't have contested primaries anywhere, but like, you shouldn't just be working out when you have a competition or a race. Health is about putting in the consistent work. And if you want a healthy democracy, you need to be voting every chance you get, whether you have a contested primary or not, whether it's a presidential year or not, whether it's city council races or not. So this is where I'll reflect on everybody. If you are upset at the state of our democracy, have your neighbors and yourself look in the mirror, because we have every opportunity to impact our democracy. When you have turnout rates of 25 to 30% in an off year and 60% in a good year, that's on us. That is completely on us. As far as like young adults go, do I think that they care? I mean, my first time getting elected, my team of interns average age of 17. I mean, they're the ones that are living. One of them was there at STEM the day of the shooting. I'm still dealing with that stuff. He went to testify when that perpetrator went to court that day. So yes, they care, and they will be plugged in for adults and for leaders that will allow them to be plugged in like me. Like again, like a lot of my team, their average age, it's gone up, but their average age is in their teens to like 19, 20. My campaign manager is 24 years old. My field director is 19 or 20. Yeah. And my interns are around college age. So young adults do care. They just need adults that will empower them.
You know, at our house, we always talked about politics when our kids were growing. We would get our
our ballots and spread them out and talk about what was going on and everything. And to this day, they all vote and they're interested and they're busy. I think everybody needs, if not just their family, but their neighbors, whatever. It just takes all of us.
Yeah, that's how we talk about it though too. If someone wants to be cynical and be like, my vote doesn't matter, my go-to is like, in HD 38 in 2018, this seat came down to 374 votes.
Yeah.
In HD 6, in the primary in HD 6, it came down to a few hundred, right? And some of the county races comes down to a few hundred. Some of these CU region races came down to a few hundred. Your vote matters, I promise you. And if you're not thinking it matters either, look at what happened in the Supreme Court. Obviously, your vote matters. What were those 9 million voters that didn't show up in 16 that showed up in 2012?
Yeah.
People want to be upset at the system again. That's why like this profession has made me a better citizen, a better voter too. But it's also made me a more honest mouthpiece to my peers that want to say that their vote doesn't matter. I'm real harsh on people when they make that statement. Like I work at a CrossFit gym that's owned by another paraplegic, so that's why I go work out there because all the workouts are adapted to me too. But they're leg walkers that work out there, and you know, one girl was like, "Well, you know, politics is just so ugly, and I just feel like my vote doesn't matter." And instantly, I'm like, "When is the last time you contributed to a local candidate? Money, even if it's $10. When's the last time?" "Oh, well, I never have."
Oh.
Well, when's the last time that you did research enough on a local candidate or on a candidate individual to see if they would have the type of character that you want? Like, if you think all politics is ugly, I'm here to tell you, as someone that is there are some good-hearted people that are truly about service at that state capitol. And I'll say this, as someone who's federal representative, Congressman Crow, I love me some Congressman Crow. I love that human being. No one's perfect. I'm not gonna say he's perfect. But as a brother veteran and someone that works with me often, like there are people at some of these levels that really are about this nation and about service. And that's what gives me hope. As dark and cynical I can be about it sometimes, like, and some of the people in the community right here, like this is what makes it worth it.
Crow has spoken to our class too, and what a great guy. It's 11:30. If anybody needs to leave, please go ahead. Don't hesitate. We're gonna go a few minutes over, but we do need to wrap up too.
If I can just say this real quick, if you want to find out more information, get on my newsletter, figure out how to get involved with the Policy Advisory Committee, figure out how to help in this election. The best way is to go to my website. It's just David Ortiz, so my name, and then the state of Colorado's name, davidortizcolorado.com. That's it. There's plenty of ways to find out how to get involved. There'll be events listed if you want to attend an event. Everything is there. There's plenty of ways to get involved and be active. Even if I'm not your specific representative, because that's happened too, that some that are represented by Republicans, especially like in Carroll area or Highlands Range, that'll still end up coming to my events and be like, "You I adopted." I'm like, absolutely. Yeah, welcome to the family.
That's great.
Do you know if Elizabeth Epps or Katie March won? I never found out. Which one won?
It was Elizabeth Epps, to my disappointment. And this is the only reason why I say that. Elizabeth Epps does work on a lot of issues that I care about. I consider myself pretty progressive. So when it comes to criminal justice reform and a lot of those issues, she in the work that she does as an ally, in the things that she says and the way that she treats people, I look at her no different than a Trump populist. She's a progressive version of a Trump populist that has said some heinous shit about that. Sorry. That has said some heinous things because the cult of personality is powerful. We've seen that throughout history, from Mao Zedong to Mussolini. And I'm not trying to compare. I'm trying to be very careful, but also using examples that people recognize. Like, and let's just use Trump then. The cult of personality is real. Now, do I like? And I'll tell a small story about why I decided to work so hard on that specific primary, because normally I will endorse people in primaries, but I won't be too involved, especially if I like both individuals, because the bottom line is that any of them can be my peers, right? And so I want to make sure I maintain a good relationship moving forward. I will, if I do endorse you, like I will host an event for you, I will do phone calls for you, I will contribute to your campaign, but I'm not gonna work with soft side or knock on doors. Like, I'm not gonna go and make things really gritty and like fight tooth and nail for that. Does that make sense or no?
Sure.
Epps and March's race was the only exception, because there were tweets and social media posts that I saw in 2015 that said no service member or veteran has ever sacrificed or died for anyone's freedom in over 70+ years. It made statements dishonoring dead service members. She made statements saying, I don't understand why people are celebrating the death of Osama bin Laden, because I don't value any service member's life above his or anybody in his compounds. Like, she just made some really ridiculous statements. And my reaction to it when I found these was not to do a political hit piece on it or go to the media. Again, like I have a certain code of conduct myself. And that is, if I have a problem with you, I'm going to try and talk to you, and we're going to try and resolve it like adults. But I didn't know her personally, so I reached out to some of her peers, some of the people that are friends with her, like Senator Gonzalez and Representative Selena Gonzalez Gutierrez. And I said, hey, this is a problem for me, especially if she ends up winning, this will be an issue. So this needs to be handled. And so Senator Gonzalez took it upon herself to do a group text with me, Epps, and Gonzalez. And she starts off saying, you know, I love and respect both of y'all for the work you do. Rep. Ortiz saw some social media posts that are older that he has some serious concerns about. I really want you two to come together and have a conversation about this. Love and respect you both. So crickets for like a day or two. So I was like, well, maybe, you know, I'll respond and poke her and see if, like, you know, see if that'll get a response for her. So I was like, hey, you know, just really want to have an honest conversations about what your viewpoint is on those that serve. Especially interested on your viewpoint on service members of color that have served and sacrificed for this nation. She could, and this was back in April too, she could not be bothered to text one word, not one word from her, which says everything I need to know about her as a person. And just her character, in my personal view, at least in my experience of her, is not one that I respect.
So it's a 2-year term.
Correct. But that seemed,
We
that,
got work to do.
yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna spend too much time. What I hope ends up happening is that people hold her accountable. See, that's my point. Like, just because you're an F supporter doesn't, and like these heinous things were said, doesn't mean I don't expect you to all of a sudden vote for somebody else. What I hope at the very least you will do is try and hold us accountable and say, be better. Like, we love the work you do, Epps. We want you to keep doing that work, but maybe be better. And that's at the very least, and that's the danger of the cult of personality, because what the cult of personality does, as we saw with Trump, is give someone a free ticket to do anything and say anything they want. And that is dangerous.
Well said, David. We need to wrap up too. And if you have questions more for David, please stay after for a few minutes. David, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Susan. Take care.
You too. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.